Hello, welcome YouTubers. I hope you guys are doing well. Just to give a little recap on where we left off in episode 5, we got this table view working with a couple of dummy elements here. So you can see test 1, test 2, test 3. And in this lesson, we're going to add a text field down here with a button. And when you hit the text field, to have that little tray animate up so that it makes room for the keyboard. So that's what we're going to focus on for this lesson. I'm going to go back into our Xcode project here. And just to remind you guys, in our storyboard, we have a table view. And then down here, we have a UI view, which we called doc view, as you can see from this document outline. If you don't have this panel, it's this button down here that you can click to show or hide the document outline. Okay, so let's go ahead in here on the right hand side, search for UI text field. If you don't have this sort of little area where you can search for elements, make sure that you're on this objects library tab right here. There are a couple of different ones here. If you're not on the right one, you won't be able to search for your elements. And furthermore, if you click this button, yours might look like this. So that's perfectly fine. You can click this button to switch into list view or the big icon view. So once you find your text field in here, just drag it into your doc view here. And what's important to make sure is that if you look at your document outline, that your text field is underneath your doc view. So it's indented in here, meaning that this text field is inside the doc view, because this is a UI view and it can contain other views. So the doc view is the parent of this text field. Okay, so now we have our text field here. If you click it, we're going to add some constraints that dictate how it's going to be laid out. So the strategy here is that I'm going to define a left margin and a top margin, and I'm not going to define a bottom margin, because when we animate, we're going to animate the height of this doc view, and it's going to grow up here to maybe halfway so that it makes room for the keyboard. And because we have a rule dictating that this text field should be, X pixels from the top edge, this text field is going to follow that, follow this doc view up, as you're going to see. So click on your text field here, go to this menu down here. I'm going to say 20 from the left, and let's say 15. Add 2 constraints, and then you can go ahead and update frames. So you're going to see that it looks squished now because we've just dictated a left margin and a top one, but we haven't dictated a right one. So it doesn't know how wide it should be, and furthermore, we don't have a constraint to dictate its width either. But we're not going to need that. So in here, in the object library pane, search for button. So we're going to add a button in here. Drag it into your doc view again. We're going to configure this button up here in the properties. I'm going to call it send. And again, if you click that, let's add a top of 15 and a right of 20. Add 2 constraints. And I'm actually going to give this button a width. Let's click this again. Let's give it a width of 70. So now when we click here, let's go update frames under all views in view controller. So now we have a width for our button, a top constraint, and a right constraint. And now I'm going to add a constraint between the text field and the button. So I'm going to click the text field. I'm going to click this button again. And I'm going to add a right constraint. But pull the drop down here and double check that the neighbor that you're specifying this constraint for is the send button. So you can see that little check mark beside it. So right now, it's 432 points away from that send button. So I'm going to make it 15. So we're going to add that constraint. and go update frames. So following the rule, it stretches out this text field because now it can infer a width, right? It should be 15. I think this is 20 actually. Yeah, so 20. It's 20 from the left, 15 from the button on the right, which gives it all of this space for typing. And both of them have a top constraint to the top edge of the dock view. Okay, so now we're going to open up the assistant editor by clicking this button right here. And this shows our view controller on the right hand side. And what we're going to do here is expose our send button and our text field as outlets so that we can reference them through code. So I'm going to hold down Control on my keyboard and click and drag over here. And this is the text field, so I'm going to call it the message text field. And now for the button, and click. I'm going to hold down Control on my keyboard, click and drag it here, and call this the send button. And now we've created two outlets, one referencing the button in our storyboard and the text field in our storyboard. Furthermore, I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Maybe make some space right here for an action method. I'm going to click the button in my document outline, hold down Control, click and drag here. And for the connection type, I'm going to choose action. For the type, I'm going to say button, and I'm going to call it send button tapped. Okay, so now we have an action method that the button is tapped. Send button is tapped. Okay, and last thing I want to do is locate the height constraint for the dock view because we're going to be animating that constraint. So if we look under the dock view here, under constraints, you can see this height constraint. If we look on the right hand side for the properties for this constraint, you can see that the item we're referring to is the dock view, the attribute is the height, relationship is equal to 60. That's what we set it at. So I'm going to expose this constraint as an outlet as well. So I'm going to hold down Control, click and drag, and just move it over here. I'm going to call this the dock view height constraint. And the reason I'm doing that is because when the send button is tapped down here, you know, this action method we created, I'm going to be animating the constant of that height constraint. So right now the constant is set at 60. I'm going to be animating that to, let's say 400 or something like that. And so you're going to see this dock view here in the storyboard, you're going to see this move up and grow in height. And then you're going to see the text field and the button follow it because it's got margins that specify it should be 15 from the top of the dock view. Okay, so let's do that. Let's go back into the single editor view. Let's jump into viewController.swift. So when the send button is tapped, what I want to do is perform an animation to grow the dock view. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to run it because I want to show you guys what happens right now that we don't have that animation. So I'm going to click into the text field here, and you can see the keyboard come up, and it totally covers our text field and our button. So we could be typing here, but you don't even know what you're typing. And furthermore, when you tap outside of the keyboard, it doesn't dismiss the keyboard. That's all stuff that we have to add code for in order to make that happen. So let's go back into our project. Okay, so the way we're going to perform the animation is by using UIView. It's got a type method of the UIView class, and it's called animate with duration. And we're going to choose We can use this one right here. So it's got a duration, let's say half a second. And for animations, we're going to open up a pair of curly braces like that, and we're going to put in our animation code. For completion, we're going to put in nil for now, which is basically what happens when the animation is complete. So by putting in nil here, we are not going to run any code when the animation is complete. Okay, so for the animations, what we're going to do, before that, we're going to call self.view layout if needed. And what this does is it tells the view for this view controller to update its view based on any changes in the constraints, if there are changes in the constraints. And we're going to do this right before the animation. In here, we're going to say self.docViewHeight constraint constant equals, and we're going to say 400. And we're going to say self.view.layout if needed, because we're changing the constraint right here. So by calling this method layout if needed, it's going to detect that the constraint has changed and then perform the update the view right away. So let's run it again, and let's see that in action. So clicking the text field now. Okay, so I put it in the wrong method here. I put it in the send button tapped. Actually, I want to move this code into when the text field is tapped. We're still going to need this send button tapped method here, because that's going to perform the sending of the message to the parse backend. But right now, we need to basically detect when the text field is being edited. So the way we do that is using protocols and delegates again, kind of like what we did here with the table view. So in order to know when the text field is being edited and when it's done editing, we have to set the view controller, this guy, as the delegate for the text field. So when the user starts editing the text field element is going to tell its delegate, hey, editing has started. So let's do that. Set self as the delegate for the text field. So self.message text field dot delegate equals self. Now there's a problem here, because self, which refers to view controller, in order to be a delegate for the text field, it has to conform to a protocol, UI text field delegate. Okay, and this basically dictates that the view controller can be set as a delegate for the text field. And now we can override, we can handle some of the delegate methods of the text field. Okay, so let's create some sections here. Let's say mark table view delegate methods. And this keyword here, mark, is very handy, because when you pull down the methods list for your class, you can see there table view delegate methods. It basically creates kind of like a section. If your class becomes really long, you can use this to organize your methods a little bit. We're going to create another one called text field delegate methods. And I'm going to start typing text field, and you can see a whole bunch of delegate methods that you can handle for the text field element. And the one we want is did begin editing right here. So when the user starts editing that text field, this method is going to get called, simply because we're handling it right here. And what I want to do is move this chunk of code right here. So when the user begins editing that text field, we animate that doc view's height. Similarly, when the text field did end editing, you see that one? We're going to perform an animation again, but this time animating it back to the original height of 60. So I'm going to copy this chunk of code, paste it here, and change the constant to 60 instead. so that it shrinks back to the original height. Okay. So let's run it now. And when we tap into the text field to begin editing, that animation code should be called. All right, so now you can see that tray or that dock view animating up. Now we have that code to animate it back down to 60 when the text field has finished editing. See, text field did end editing, but what dictates finished editing, right? Hitting return doesn't do it. Tapping outside doesn't do it. Ideally, when we hit send or we tap outside, that dictates did end editing. So we have to detect when the user either hits the send button, when the user taps outside, say taps the table view or something like that, that we call a method that the text field has to tell it that it's finished editing. So let's demonstrate that in the send button tapped first. So send button is tapped. Call the end editing method for the text field. So we're going to say self.text field, message text field dot end editing causes the view. Well, you can't really read it, but basically it tells the text field that you're done or the user is done. We're going to say true for forcing it to end editing. By calling this method, it's going to trigger this text field did end editing delegate method, which in turn is going to call our little animation to animate it back. Okay. In order to detect when the table view has been tapped, I'm going to add a tap gesture recognizer to the table. I'll show you how that works. So add a tap gesture recognizer to the table view. I'm going to say let tap gesture be a UI tap gesture recognizer, and I'm going to create a new one. The target and action. When this tap gesture happens, which method or action of which target or object do you want to trigger? So because I'm going to create that method in the view controller, I'm going to put self as target, and for the action, I'm going to create a new method called table view tapped. Okay, don't forget to add the tap gesture to the table. So we're going to say self.table view dot, it's message table view that we have, add gesture recognizer, and I'm going to pass it the tap gesture. All right, so now whenever the table view is tapped, it's going to trigger a method called table view tapped. So let's create that down here. And in here, I just want to, oops, forgot my brackets there. I just want to trigger force the text field to end editing. So self.message text field end editing true. And here I'm going to change 400. Instead of 400, I'm going to say 350 because it seemed to have animated a little too high. Okay, so tapping that moves it up, and if I hit the send button, it's going to animate it back down. Or if I tap the table view like that, it's going to animate it back down as well. All right, so now we've got our text field and our send button and also the animation for that working. In the next lesson, we're going to actually implement the code that sends the data to parse, and then after that, the retrieving code to grab the messages from the parse backend to display in our table view. Hope you guys enjoyed the lesson, and I'll see you guys next time.